Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zakir Jacob. Yesterday, during a heated debate on Kashmir in the Lok Sabha, Home Minister Amit Shah lambasted the country's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, saying that Nehru made two blunders on Kashmir. One, agreeing to a ceasefire when India's troops were within striking distance of Lahore, and the other, taking the Kashmir matter all the way to the United Nations. Now, opposition parties have contested that claim, saying that Nehru agreed to these decisions. One, because he didn't want more casualties. Remember, both India and Pakistan were reeling with the aftermath of the partition. And this was basis advice given to him by the military leadership. And it was also a collective decision taken by the cabinet, not a personal decision, not a singular individual decision taken by Nehru. But Nehru's legacy when it comes to Kashmir is a sore point. Whether it is the inclusion of Article 370, whether it was taking it to the United Nations, thereby internationalizing it, and perhaps that was a factor in why this issue festered for so many years. Is Nehru responsible for the travails of Kashmir?
नेहरू के समय में जो ब्लंडर हुआ था, इसके कारण कश्मीर को भुगतना।
हम मुजफ्फराबाद क्यों नहीं? उस वक्त पुंछ और राजौरी को बचाने के लिए फौज को डाइवर्ट कर दिया गया कि पुंछ और राजौरी बच जाए।
आप तो इतिहास रचने आए थे, आप इतिहास में जा जाकर दूसरों को क्यों कोस रहे हैं?
बदलाव हम सबको नजर आ रहा है, लेकिन जो बदलाव हम देख रहे हैं उसमें हमारी बर्बादी है, उसमें तबाही है, उसमें जम्मू कश्मीर को नुकसान हुआ है, जम्मू कश्मीर को फायदा है।
They want to use this Kashmiri Pandit plight for their own electioneering.
How can you amend something which is still before the Supreme Court for adjudication on the legality of the original action? If the abolition of 370 has not been fixed, then how can you amend it?
All right, so the Nehruvian blunder on Kashmir, is it a truth or a distortion? This is what happened in the Lok Sabha yesterday. So Amit Shah, while replying to the debate on the relief for Kashmiri Pandits when it comes to Kashmir, he was speaking on an amendment. He said that Nehru made a mistake to declare a ceasefire with Pakistan when our army, the Indian army, was winning. To which the opposition has countered by saying that Nehru at that time was advised by the then army chief, Francis Butcher, that military option was untenable. Now, Amit Shah went on to also attack Nehru for saying that it was a mistake to call and seek for a plebiscite and taking the Kashmir matter all the way to the United Nations, seeking the intervention of the UN. Opposition has countered that. In fact, Farooq Abdullah has said that Nehru's actions by taking the matter to the UN, he managed to save Rajouri and Poonch because, of course, the tribal invaders were trying to attack that part of Jammu. Then Amit Shah also went on to say that it was not just Nehru's decision. In fact, that was the response from the opposition. So I beg your pardon. It was not just Nehru's decision. It was a collective decision of the cabinet, including the then Home Minister Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel had given his stamp of approval to that. And also that the situation called for a political solution. But that was not all. Amit Shah further attacked Nehru for the actions which he claimed led to the creation of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now, Amit Shah and the right wing, they believe that had Nehru asked or allowed the Indian Army troops to continue marching on further into what is now called Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, then this whole problem would not have surfaced, that Kashmir would be one. There wouldn't be a Kashmir on the Indian side and a Kashmir on the Pakistani side. Now, to which the opposition has countered by saying that they are daring the government to reclaim POK before the 2024 polls. Also, the opposition's contention is that the government is obsessed with tarnishing Nehru's legacy. Now, the BJP's top brass continues to second what the Home Minister said, his attack on Nehru's Kashmir record. In fact, Union Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar has tweeted, and this is part of our Motorola India's Best 5G Smartphone Brands tweet of the day.
Hello, Moto.
All right, so this is what Rajiv Chandrasekhar has tweeted. Regardless of how these long discredited leaders like Dr. Farooq Abdullah try and spin it, History tells us the truth, and the truth is this, that in terms of protecting India's territorial integrity and sovereignty, Pandit Nehru was the worst Prime Minister of India, period. HM Amit Shah laid out the historical truth about J&K and the blunders of 1947-48, and thousands paid the cost over several decades. Still, 370 was repealed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Himalayan blunder is the best way to describe Pandit Nehru's policies. So, let's get to our big debate. Is the Nehruvian blunder in Kashmir, the attack by the Home Minister, a truth and true to facts as it played out in 1947-48, or is it a distortion meant to serve a political purpose?
Hello, Moto.
All right, joining us on the talking point this evening, Tuin Sinha is national spokesperson of the BJP, Mohan Kumar Mangalam is spokesperson of the Congress Party, Zishan Javed Rana is spokesperson of the National Conference, Arti Tikku Singh, senior journalist who hails from Kashmir. Let me start with Mohan Kumar Mangalam. You know, even Nehru's admirers and fans say that one of the major criticisms against Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru is taking the Kashmir issue to the United Nations, basically internationalizing the matter, and that is what led, that was the genesis of this prolonged and unresolved conflict. It was ill-advised and it was bad strategy on the part of Nehru to take the matter to the United Nations, because the involvement of the United Nations basically made this an unresolvable issue and a decades-long prolonged issue. Mohan Kumar Mangalam.
Zaka, I don't think that one action made this an unresolvable issue. The reason why the Kashmir issue still stays unresolved is that the Pakistan nation is run by its army. And so every time, whether it was B. Vajpayee ji, whether it was Dr. Manmohan Singh, or whether it was any prime minister prior, has tried to engage in meaningful dialogue, not only to stop the cross-border terrorism that comes from Pakistan, but also to try and resolve the Kashmir issue. We have terror attacks, we have insurgency that goes on the rise. So the real problem, or the real reason why we're still where we are in the relationship between India and Pakistan, is the fact that the Pakistani government is actually run by its army. Now, if you go back to that particular decision, listen, how long are we going to keep talking about what happened 75 years ago? I'm sorry, but I really thought this debate is going to be about the J&K reorganization bill, where Mr. Amit Shah made a very long and
as part of that bill, Mr. Amit Shah made a certain bunch of claims. You are well within your right to contest those claims.
Zaka, I don't have to contest those claims. Those claims have been clarified. You've played out what senior leaders of my party have said about both those things that he talked about. There is so much more substantive here to talk about. In the reorganization, Mr. Amit Shah has very cleverly and quietly increased disproportionately the number of seats in the Jammu region and added 2 nominees so he can walk through an election. Because as you know what he's done in the last 10 years.
Let's take this one by one, right? No, one second. Let's take this one by one. Let's take this one by one, please. Please give me a moment. Let's take this one by one. You are talking about, the reason why the Kashmir issue became so entrenched was because Pakistan is always controlled by its military. They have this policy of death by 1,000 cuts, that terrorism is the real reason why this issue has not been resolved. But terrorism, relative to what happened in 47-48, is a relatively new problem. It started in the 80s, right? Prior to which, India had fought 3 wars with Pakistan and won all 3 wars. The contention that's being made by Mr. Amit Shah yesterday in Parliament, and this is of course something that Tuin Sinha, his party and people in the right believe, that the genesis of this problem was because Pandit Nehru, whether it was upon advice of the military leadership at that time or his cabinet at that time, ill-advisedly decided to take this matter to the United Nations. That is the genesis of this problem. What came, much after that, terrorism, etc., is many, many decades after that.
Zaka, we went to the UN because there were people from across the border, the tribal raiders, that were still occupying territory that was ours. Now, even today, you have Chinese occupying our territory today. Are we doing anything about it? Are we able to bomb them and send them back? Or are we going to war with China at this point? Okay. No. We're trying to use international diplomacy to solve that issue. That is exactly what we did that day. And by the way, India was a far weaker economic power then. We had just gained independence. We had our own share of problems. There is also this debate, and I'll bring it up even though it's not part of this, is that Mr. Modi had said in a speech why Salazar took so long to pull out of Goa. It was because until we got the support of JF Kennedy, we weren't able to make that happen. You must realize the reality we lived in during those days,
Okay.
and the conditions and the operations that we worked with.
Okay, so let
To
me
go
ask
back to
Tuhin
that
Sinha,
time
one of the
and
realities
blame
of
someone is
that
easy.
time, we're talking about October, November 1947, going through all the way into 1948, was that the country was reeling, in fact, the entire subcontinent was reeling under the partition. More than 1 million people had died, and the military leadership at that time had told Nehru that if they go ahead and bomb Lahore, then it would only lead to more deaths. And for a newborn nation, the first prime minister of a newborn nation at that time, he already, like I said, because of the painful events of the partition, was contending with so many tens of thousands of lives that were lost, millions that were displaced. The last thing that any prime minister in that position would have wanted was a full-fledged war. Any prime minister would have taken the sensible decision of trying the diplomatic option, and that's all that Nehru did.
Well, good evening, Zaka, good evening, everybody. You know, when it comes to Nehruvian blunders, there were multiple blunders. Honorable Amit Shah ji just mentioned two of them when it comes to Kashmir. But exactly 5 weeks before the Pakistani invaders invaded Kashmir, Maharaja Hari Singh had sent his emissary to Delhi to sign the instrument of accession. Nehru at that point plainly refused, saying that you first install democracy and release. Now, please don't interfere in between. You release,
don't get your
you release Sheikh Abdullah from jail. That was his condition. Had Nehru signed the instrument of accession at that point of time, the invasion would not have taken place. Number two, you know, we all know that with the onset of winter, it would have been very difficult to reclaim Kashmir immediately, like you mentioned. But by referring the whole issue to UN, and on the advice of all people, on the advice of, of all people, Edwina Mountbatten, which is documented book in Edwina Mountbatten's daughter's book, you know, Nehru committed a blunder whose price the present generation is still paying. You know, imagine had he not referred it to UN, in a subsequent year, it would have been possible for the Indian army to reclaim it once the disturbance of the partition would have settled. Okay. But that was not possible because of his erroneous decision to take the issue to the UN. And again, a third issue. Sardar Patel prevented him from committing another blunder, which was to agree, he would have agreed to an unconditional plebiscite. It was Sardar Patel who made sure that the condition was inserted that till such time Pakistan completely vacates every inch of Indian land captured by it, the plebiscite will not take place. So, you know, Nehru was stopped from committing another blunder. You know, you have to accept the fact that Nehru was very callous about Indian territory. So, you know, the comments like, why do we need Ladakh? Why do we need a certain portion of Ladakh? Because all that grows there is a, not even a blade of glass grows, yeah. So he was very callous about Indian territory. He was very complacent about Indian territory, and that's a fact that needs to be highlighted.
So
if we have to
let me ask Aarti Singh Tikku this. Again, I come back to the Article 370 issue, and this was referred to or reference to in the debate yesterday in Parliament. Now, the contention by the BJP, and the Home Minister referred to this in his comments as well, was that Nehru decided to include Article 370 in the Indian Constitution, granting special autonomy to Jammu and Kashmir, almost as like a token gesture to Maharaja Hari Singh and to his good friend Sheikh Abdullah, because had Nehru not conceded to Article 370, then the instrument of accession would not have been signed. Would you agree with that contention?
Well, Zaka, the fact is that Nehru, by his own admission, actually realized and said that he made mistakes vis-a-vis Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, in a letter to Sheikh Abdullah, Nehru did say that going to the UN was actually not the most effective way. And he said in his letter that nothing satisfactory is going to come out of it, not a satisfactory outcome.
Okay.
So also, if you look at the historical events that followed the accession of Jammu and Kashmir with the Union of India, look what happened after Nehru actually handed over the state of Jammu and Kashmir to Sheikh Abdullah on a silver platter. It was only after the inclusion of Article 370 in the Constitution of India, Nehru tried to basically impose Delhi Agreement on Jammu and Kashmir and asked Sheikh Abdullah to ratify it. And we saw that in 1953, Nehru somewhere did realize that Sheikh Abdullah betrayed him, betrayed him on every front. And that is why Nehru had to jail, he had to incarcerate Sheikh Abdullah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for the Congress party and the opposition today to say that Nehru did great things, no, by his own admission, he made great blunders on Jammu and Kashmir. And I completely agree with the Union Home Minister, Amit Shah ji, who said that two blunders, he in fact spoke only of two blunders, but I would actually put on record that there were three major blunders that Nehru made on Kashmir. One was, of course, to stop the Indian troops at the line of control and go for a ceasefire with Pakistan, whereas we were actually in a very good position to have control of the entire...
What would you say to the critics who say that that was not possible because the country was reeling with over 1 million deaths because of partition, and no Prime Minister in Nehru's position would have wanted to go for a full-scale war?
Very good question, Zaka. Absolutely a very, very important question. Look what has happened in the last 75 years. Nehru avoided that full-fledged war in 1947, and in the following years, we have had 4 wars with Pakistan, conventional wars. We have given enough sacrifice of our soldiers through those wars. And apart from those 4 wars, we have had sub-conventional war for 33 years, which was started by Pakistan in 89 through cross-border terrorism. And we continue to pay price. And apart from that, we have had ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Pandit Hindus. 300,000 Kashmiri Pandits wiped out of Kashmir, not going back as of today, haven't found their homeland in Kashmir as of today. And apart from that, in the last 33 years, India has had to pay so much in terms of security funding, in terms of maintaining that state, managing that conflict, trying to resolve that conflict. So the amount of cost, if you really do a cost-benefit analysis of what Nehru could have spent, what the nation could have spent in 1947, and then compare the cost that India has paid in the last 75 years, you will find your answer that India has paid a huge cost because
let me go to Zishan Javed Rana of the National Conference. Zishan Javed Rana, the contention also was that Nehru had placed considerable and in hindsight misplaced trust in Sheikh Abdullah, the leader of your party, the founder of your party, the National Conference. This trust, critics argue, was misplaced. Sheikh Abdullah had political ambitions, and it was upon his insistence for autonomy that Article 370 was included as a condition, almost on blackmail, as part of the instrument of accession, because without 370, Sheikh Abdullah said that Kashmir will not be part of the Indian Union. 370 was done for Sheikh Abdullah's own personal and political ambitions and not necessarily reflecting the realities on the ground. So you had this spike-one situation where in one country you had 2 sets of constitutions, 2 sets of flags, which no country would accept. And this was done, the BJP and the Home Minister and the right wing are arguing, at the insistence of Sheikh Abdullah.
See, Zaka, I would say that BJP has a history of putting out distorted facts about the history of Jammu and Kashmir. I would say that history must be kind to Pandit Nehru, because it was only due to his efforts and the efforts of Sher-e Kashmir Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah that Jammu and Kashmir became an integral part of India. So BJP is just trying to save its skin, because whatever they promised to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, they have failed to deliver. They promised corruption-free governance. They promised employment to the people of to the youth of Jammu and Kashmir. But every promise from last 4 years, the people of Jammu and Kashmir are witnessing. They have nothing to say about the restoration of democracy in Jammu and Kashmir. And I would say all these facts which are being put out in Parliament by Honorable Home Minister Amit Shah is just to divert the attention of the public of this country and the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
No, but Mr. Zishan,
the people of Jammu and Kashmir
let's go back to the point that was raised during the course of the debate. That was it at Sheikh Abdullah's insistence that Article 370 was included as part of the deal for the instrument of accession, and had that not been agreed to, what would have happened? You think Maharaja Hari Singh would have gone with Pakistan? Is that your contention?
No, I would like to say that our leader rejected two-nation theory because we had an option. We could have gone to Pakistan as a Muslim state, as a Muslim majority state, but our leader, Jammu and Kashmir stayed with India. And on that, the promises made by the government of India, we demanded that because when the instrument of accession was signed, there were some guidelines which were put it that the Jammu and Kashmir will be a special state and with some special powers.
No,
so that's why
there were other princely states that also joined the Indian Union. Junagadh joined, Hyderabad joined. None of them have any special articles of the Constitution. Yeah, Aarti, respond, and then I'll go back to the spokesperson.
See, Zaka, I would say that we never merged. We became an integral part of India, but Jammu and Kashmir never merged with the rest of the country.
No, that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. That it was not like Kashmir was the only princely state. There were other princely states that joined the Indian Union. None of them had any special articles of the Constitution. Yeah, Aarti, yes.
Zaka, the point is not only...
No, once again, Zishan, please yield, that Aarti respond. Yeah, Aarti.
Yeah, Zaka, the issue is not that, other princely states also joined the Union of India. They signed the same instrument of accession that Jammu and Kashmir actually signed. But the fact is that the rulers of the princely states were the only authority who could sign the instrument of accession. Sheikh Abdullah, or for that matter, any other political leader or politician did not have the authority to sign the instrument of accession. So for National Conference and the Abdullah family, who've been running the state, ruling the state for so many decades, for them to lie through their teeth on national television to say that they could have joined Pakistan, actually they had no locus standi to join either India or Pakistan. It was only Maharaja Hari Singh who had the authority to do so.
Okay.
So that's one. And second, Sheikh Abdullah was a popular leader undoubtedly in Kashmir. But was he a popular leader in Jammu? Was he a popular leader in Ladakh? We do not know. It's a hypothetical question because there was no election whatsoever. In fact, he was elected unopposed. There was no contest when he was given the reins of the state by Nehru in 1947.
Okay. So let me ask Mohan Kumar Mangalam, even if one were to argue, let's look at the mitigating factors, right? The inclusion of Article 370 as part of the Indian Constitution was to recognize the special circumstances under which Kashmir joined the Indian Union, became an integral part of India. Now, the instrument of accession was signed by Maharaja Hari Singh. Even when it was signed, this article was meant to be a temporary provision meant to provide autonomy until a final resolution could be achieved. This was in 1947-48. For 70 years, what did the Congress do to remove this temporary provision?
I should ask you that in 4 years, what is the BJP achieved by removing this provision? I just heard Mr. Amit Shah say that now he'll give you zero terror plan in 2026. Farmers are still waiting for their incomes to double. The middle class is still waiting for the rupee to hit 40. Unemployed youth are still waiting to get 2 crore jobs. This postponement of what is always, boasted about as a target is becoming a bit of a habit. I know Mr. Amit Shah is good at jumlas in rallies, but in parliament too now. Now, let me get back to what the BJP spokesperson said, because this lie was actually first brought out by Mr. Kiran Rijiju and was debunked. I'm just surprised that he didn't look at the debunking. History witness, there is tons of documents out there that talks about how indecisive Hari Singh was. Lord Mountbatten went to go meet him. He sent him on a fishing trip and then cancelled their appointment. every time Lord Mountbatten brought up the issue of accession to Hari Singh, he would avoid it. No less than his own son, Dr. Karan Singh, has said that he was indecisive by nature. He merely played for time. Paralysis of princely uncertainty is what it was termed as by Alan Caldwell, Mountbatten's own secretary. So please, let's not get into this sort of a fantasy land of how Nehru could have easily gotten Kashmir without having to go through what we went through. Number one. Number two, Sardar Patel told Liaquat that take Kashmir and give us Hyderabad. So I know that the BJP loves praising Sardar Patel and wants to appropriate his legacy because they don't have any freedom fighters of their own. But the truth of the fact is that if not for Pandit Nehru, we probably wouldn't have any portion of Kashmir today.
Okay.
And let me just say that with all these historical figures, I'm not saying this to disparage Sardar Patel ji in any way. I think they all had strong minds and did what they thought was best for the country. Nobody in that time frame was someone who said, let's do something that's wrong for the country. I don't even think that's the case today, even though the BJP likes to paint the opposition as anti-Indian or urban naxal or what have you.
Even on the decision to go to the United Nations, that was a decision taken by the cabinet of Nehru, and Sardar Patel was the Home Minister at that time. Surely he had to give his assent to such a decision. That's the content. Even Farooq Abdullah yesterday said that this was not some individual personal decision taken by Nehru. It was a collective decision of the cabinet, which included some of the stalwarts of the freedom struggle.
Zakka, like I mentioned, Edwina Mountbatten's daughter has mentioned in her memoirs the influence of her mother in convincing Nehru. So that by itself shows the shady nature of politics prevalent at that point of time. There are cabinet decisions even today. Obviously, the Prime Minister holds primacy. Obviously, the Prime Minister holds a dominant position by virtue of him being the Prime Minister.
Not at all.
So, in many situations, things don't interfere in this manner. Have the basic courtesy. Now, let me also debunk the myth which both the Kashmiri Party, PDP and NC National Conference have been spreading for decades now, that Article 370 and 35A were linked to Kashmir's accession. The instrument of accession was absolutely unconditional. In fact, 35A was brought in as late as 1954, May 1954, 7 after Kashmir became a part of India. And what was the reason? That was a compensation for Kashmir for the Kashmir conspiracy case of 1953, where Farooq Abdullah was incarcerated because, Nehru himself realized that Sheikh Abdullah was a perpetual blackmailer. He would never get out of it. The only real leader of National Conference was somebody called Maqbool Sherwani, who actually fought for 4 or 5 days in Baramulla in 1947, preventing an easy takeover of Kashmir. But even, people of National Conference were feeling betrayed by Sheikh Abdullah's policies subsequently.
All right, Zishan, Javed, please respond to that.
See, Zaka, I would like to say that it was all due to the efforts made by Sher Kashmir Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah that Jammu and Kashmir became an integral part of India. And there is absolutely no doubt about it. And we must all go through the debates that were taken place during the when the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir was called. The debates, the speeches made by Sher Kashmir Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah. He said that we have a future with India, not with Pakistan. And it was all due to his efforts. Now that history, when all this is being done, and BJP has nothing to do because it has promised that Jammu Kashmir will be a different Jammu Kashmir after post-August 2019. But nothing that of sort has been done in last 4 years. So BJP just to distract the people of this country.
We've had multiple reports about how daily life is getting back to normal in Kashmir. Today you go out there in the night, the markets are open, the stalls are open, people are leading as normal a life as in any other part of this country. And that's there for all to see.
But Zaka, people are being killed also. You have, even today, one sub-inspector of Jammu and Kashmir police has died. Last month, 3 young officers were killed. We have, there were areas in Rajouri and Poonch which were free of militancy. Now you can see active militancy in that area. So what does that mean? The government of India is just trying to ensure that they are helpless.
Okay.
They're
so,
just trying
I'll
to
give you
portray
the final word, the contention by the likes of Mr. Zishan, his party. You heard Omar Abdullah earlier on in the package that we played. They are saying that all of this history lesson and this digression is happening because the reality on the ground hasn't changed, even though the overall numbers of terrorist incidents has come down. The gravity of those incidents and the newer places where it's happening. Rajouri and Poonch are two examples. Even just a few days ago, we had that incident that happened in Rajouri where I believe 3 officers died, if I'm not mistaken, 3 officers and 1 JCO. And there have been increasing such, daring attacks in that belt. So their contention is the BJP, to try and hide its failures in Kashmir, is, raking up all these history lessons. How would you respond to that?
Zaka, completely unfair. I have been a survivor of ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Pandit Hindus in 1989, 1990. I went back as a journalist, and for the last 23 years, I have worked on Kashmir. I have worked in Kashmir, and I can tell you with a lot of confidence and assertion that things have changed. Situation has dramatically changed in the last 4 years. For example, we saw rioting, we saw stone pelting, we saw kids getting killed on the streets from 2000. We saw that happening in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 2016. Till 2018, we saw all those episodes of young kids getting killed on the streets. That phenomena, that has stopped altogether. Okay. That's a major shift. Second, if you look at the data, we have seen a dramatic decrease in terror, attacks. We have, although there have been targeted killings, and there is undoubtedly still a threat of, terror attacks in Kashmir. But thanks to the kind of communal politics, the kind of separatist politics, the kind of soft separatist politics, the PDP, the National Conference, Hurriyat Conference, JKLF, and all their supporters in Delhi and elsewhere in the country, it's because of that, 75 years of rot is still taking time to get cleaned out in Kashmir.
Okay,
so
we'll leave it at that.